In Laverne and Claremont, public art helps to tell the story of our history, heritage, and traditions. A land boom hotel from the 1800s would become Lordsburg College. There was a time when gasoline sold for 19 cents a gallon, and the big red car could take you almost anywhere in the Southland. The citrus industry would be king and would play an important part in shaping the Laverne economy and society, as well as influencing the community's culture. In the early 1800s, Hispanic families would own large ranchos in this area and influence much of our history and culture with their rich traditions. Important to Laverne's development as a community would be the life and times of J. Marion Roynon, educator, community leader, and family man. Lincoln School was located on the west side of the Roynon School grounds until 1951. It was torn down because it wasn't considered safe from earthquakes. The design of Roynon School was before its time, award-winning, innovative and daring. Bold and modern lines complemented a setting for teaching and learning to take place. Roynon School, being named after Mr. Roynon, is much of what we celebrate on the 50th anniversary of the school's dedication. The story of why the school was named after Mr. Roynon goes beyond the naming 50 years ago. Marion Roynon came to Lordsburg at the age of 14 to attend the academy at Lordsburg College. His room was on the second floor of the hotel building the Brethren Church had converted into a college. That is Marian on the left with his roommate Howard Beckner. He would make lifelong friends at Lordsburg College. Marian would become a Boy Scout while living in Lordsburg and would spend the rest of his life living by the Boy Scout motto, "On my honor, I will do my best to do my duty to God and my country." During his college education, Marian would become well-versed in the 3 R's: respect, responsibility, and religion. He would live his life by Brethren values, stating, "My word is my bond, my life is my witness." When Marian graduated in 1926, Lordsburg College had become Laverne College, and he would join a distinguished group of alumni. Along with the Pennsylvania Dutch names of Blickenstaff, Gibbel, Overholzer, were Palomares, Véjar, Yorba, Soto, Carrión. Porfirio Palomares, Ignacio Véjar, and Ramon Véjar were from the families that held the Spanish land grants that Governor Alvarado issued in 1837, before California became a state. In an early graduating class, 15 of the 65 graduates were from Hispanic families. The value of cultural diversity would make an impression on Marion Roynon that would last a lifetime. Roynon received training as an educator and would start his career as a teacher at Lincoln School. Along the way, he and his wife Rhoda would raise 6 girls. Roynon would move on to become principal at Lincoln School, and then superintendent. When Roynon was chosen to become the superintendent of the elementary schools, there were some who questioned his qualifications to be that administrator. Time would show that those critics were overlooking his greatest assets, a kind and loving heart, along with a keen sense for what is right. His family would continue to grow and grow and grow. He would prove to be an outstanding administrator and would put his career on the line by integrating the Laverne School, years before the federal mandate in 1954. In 1950, Lincoln School was made up mostly of white students. The Mexican children went to Palomares, south of the railroad tracks, in what is now Arrow Highway. The segregated school was just one of many indignities put upon the Mexican children. They lived in an overtly racist society where they were insulted or ignored. Mexicans could only swim in city swimming pools on the day before the pool was cleaned. They and their families were often turned away from restaurants. Perhaps the greatest indignity was that they were being denied the kind of education that the white children were receiving. Palomares classrooms were overcrowded, with up to 75 children in a room. For economic reasons, many children had to work in the fields and groves part of the school year, setting them further behind in their education. To add to the dilemma, most of the Palomares teachers didn't speak Spanish. Many of the teachers were caring professionals and tried to make up for their language deficiencies. The teachers would take the children on field trips and give them birthday parties. None of these efforts, as sincere as they might be, could cover the feeling that the Palomares students were being treated as second-class citizens. In preparation for the 50th anniversary celebration, former students and teachers met together to reflect on their school days and the impact that Mr. Roynon had had on their lives. 3 of the Roynon daughters, Pat, Ernest, and Janet, came to share thoughts about their father. Helen Castellano Serna was a student at Palomares School. City Councilman Robert Rodriguez was a Lincoln School student.
Everything that we did was
Genevieve Morales, Robert's sister, also attended Lincoln School. Dr. Dolores Garcia Gonzalez, an assistant professor at the University of Laverne, was a student at Lincoln. Richard Flores and Dolores Ibarra Haynes are descendants of the Spanish land grant families. Both attended Lincoln.
And we've just discovered that he was one of my students.
That year was
Just you?
1945, 46.
You know the rest of the kids here? You know?
Margaret Leininger taught kindergarten at Palomares School.
Somehow or other, he just kind of fit in. My background was not Spanish. I'd had Latin in college, but that really didn't help.
Roman Morales went to Palomares School. Bob Morales, Roman's brother, also attended Palomares. Dwight Hannawalt had Marion Roynon as a teacher at Lincoln School. Lena Coffin was a teacher at Palomares. Nicolas Fuentes was a student at Palomares also. Darrell Brent was a student at Lincoln and a friend of Mr. Roynon. Darrell would later teach at Roynon School. Laverne Mayor John Blickenstaff was a student at Palomares and transferred when the new school was completed.
We lived on Orange Street, which is the southernmost street in the city, exactly at the end of D Street at that time. And I just didn't know there was any other school. But maybe there wasn't, I'm not sure. But Palomares was just a couple of blocks away. And I can remember going to Palomares School, must have been from September till late winter time or early spring when the new Roynon School opened up. My one memory of the new kindergarten class was going down a brand new slide. That was a pretty exciting thing.
Virgil Welch was a teacher at Lincoln School. Harold Dyer was a teacher at both Lincoln and Roynon School.
One of the things that Mr. Roynon hired me for was that I had a good time with the kids in 8th grade. I stayed on my own time after school and worked with softball and basketball and so on.
Walt Eversole and Helen Eversole were students at Lincoln. Helen would later teach at Roynon School.
Well, it's quite an elegant school for them to tear down, if you ask me.
It had a big auditorium. We graduated on a stage in the big auditorium in Lincoln School.
Yeah.
Janice Willett went to both Lincoln and Palomares. Her father, Bob Haynes, served 25 years as principal of
I
Roynon.
don't think of anything else. I, too, had to go twice to the principal. That was a horrible thing to do when it was your father. I ran in the sprinklers when I had Mrs. Vanneman.
I'm Genevieve Jordan, and I was a teacher in the Lincoln School for several years before we decided that this wasn't right, as Mr. Roynon said.
My mother brought me to school. It was 1945, okay? It was the war, towards the end of the war. My mother had just lost a brother in Italy. He was killed, and had another brother that was wounded in the Aleutian Islands. The men are good enough to go to war and get killed, then their children are good enough to come to this school.
What would have been the problem with going to Palomares?
What would have been the problem? Well, according to my mother, and as I have talked to my aunts since, each grade, each class had 4 grades to a class. They were awfully overcrowded. They were sharing desks. The kids did not speak English, and the teachers didn't speak Spanish. So how can they learn?
My memory of entering Lincoln School at the time was that my mother also had heard about the segregation of the Mexican school and the Anglo school. And she definitely wanted my brother and I to have good English skills. So she talked to the neighbors about it, and the neighbors said there's no way they're going to let you put your children in it at the Anglo school. It does say right here, public deduction for public schools. And so therefore my husband has been paying for this school. If this is a public school, isn't it? And he said, well, yes, it is. Well, then my husband has been paying for this school to be maintained.
And I took my practice teaching with Alice Brubaker, who had kindergarten, junior first, and first all in one class. And the last half of the semester, they invited me back to be her helper and to be paid at $1 an hour out of the janitor's fund because they didn't have anything left in the teacher's fund.
We're descendants of the Vejars and the Palomares. So we have been here now with my daughter 7 generations, along with our friends here. We didn't know what segregation was, or at least I didn't. Some of us did not. Mr. Cullen and the board of directors decided that if we lived north of the railroad tracks, we could attend Lincoln School, which we did. Why do the other students have to attend Palomares? Oh, so that they won't have to cross the tracks. You see, we're doing it for their safety.
What are your recollections about integration and bringing the Hispanic children into the fold to come to what would become Roynon School?
I know there was a lot of controversy about that. People didn't want their children going down below the tracks. That was the main thing. They couldn't say that they didn't like the Mexican people, but they said, we don't want our children to cross the railroad tracks.
Yeah.
Did families buy that line about, well, it's for your safety, we don't want families crossing the tracks, or did they see that as blatant prejudice?
I think they saw it, but they we're here, the kids are gonna stay,
They're still alive and well, except for Nick, who was such a charmer and one of the best friends we had. Also, I must say about Nick, they were Spaniards, so that was another reason they got to come here freebies, because they were Europeans, and the rest of us had Mexican surnames. But as I mentioned, my mother was a Roland, and she was not about to stand for that. I would not come here, and because of her and our families who had been here for so long, before California was in the Union, and we're not coming to school here, it didn't make sense.
Mr. Roynon being the principal and then the superintendent of schools. Mother used to talk to me in Spanish. I used to answer her in English. Remembering the children were being spanked in Palomares for speaking Spanish. At least that's
because if you spoke Spanish, first thing they do, they grab you by the ear, take you in the little room, and whip your fanny. No, that was one of the things that they used to do. You couldn't speak Spanish. If they caught you speaking Spanish, there you go.
What about when you were outside playing?
That's the
That
same
was
thing.
my worst frustration. Some of that low self-esteem, though, starts with having their language denied.
The parents, would have the boys and the girls in school, and right around May, all of a sudden, you see just an exit. The families were moving. They were going up to Fresno to follow the grapes, follow the apricots, follow everything. So those kids were losing out of school.
They'd pull them out of school to go
Oh
up.
yeah,
And early too.
They
In
pulled
the
them out of
fall,
school
there was
early.
another
They pulled them out of school
exodus.
because they were going to go up there and make some money. And like Bobby says, my dad insisted, no, they're going to stay in school. And I know. Remember people telling my dad, Mr. Morales, you're crazy. You're crazy. You've got 5. You can go up there and make $100 a day. My dad says, no, they're going to go to school.
But you also have to realize why they did these things. Economically, they had to.
Yeah,
Sure.
sure.
I mean, it was,
Yes.
when things get tough, do you want to go to school or do you want to eat? I want to eat,
This wasn't right, as Mr. Roynon said. And we put the Palomares School and the Lincoln School children all together.
I always felt like he knew this was right and this is what had to be done. He went down to the Palomares School, and Mrs. Peck had 80 kids in this room. And in order for him to talk to Mrs. Peck, all the children had to move their desks to one side so she could come back and talk to him. And then he came back to Roynon, and we had like 20, 25 in a room. And he said, I can remember him telling my mother, this is not right. And he wanted to be sure that was taken care of.
I think at the time of integrating the schools, Mr. Roynon was also very aware of the many mothers, not mothers like mine and like Robert's mother and like Dolores's mother, and Mary Castellano, who were very verbal about where they wanted their children to be educated. And I think that Mr. Roynon had that awareness, though maybe he wasn't the principal, but he definitely had the awareness that there was a need for this.
I remember him getting several phone calls, and they would have to hang up. I mean, they would
they tell him their message and then hang up without saying who they were. And he got several letters that we called poison pen letters that weren't signed. And I can remember him being very, very unhappy about the situation.
I remember my daddy as being very honest and always spoke the truth as he knew it, and very and full of integrity. I mean, moral, you couldn't find a more moral man than my dad, and that was very important to him, and he instilled those things in us.
What sticks in your mind about him?
He was very constant. He was always, you know, he was there every single evening at every single meal, fixed breakfasts for us, probably every Sunday morning.
Well, I remember every Sunday my dad would let us sit in his lap and he read the funny papers to us. He was a very loving dad. And he always said he was glad he had 6 girls and he didn't care that he didn't have boys. I don't know if that was true, but he never made us feel bad that we were all girls. Very loving father.
Than that. He was my Sunday school teacher at the church. He was a regular, dedicated, impressive man.
I have nothing but fond memories of Mr. Roynon. I think he was he was a church leader, and I went to the same church. He was a leader here. He was strict, but fair. I don't think any fairer person that I would know.
Because that must have been a Lincoln School thing, because it was Dolores Gonzalez.
Seems to me that those wings used to come way out.
Oh, that was really something when you got to go to the...
I think
Oh, yeah.
up to 50.
I can't remember the name of it, but I remembered the whole poem.
All of this group who had attended Palomares, Lincoln, or Roynon schools, as well as those who had taught at one of the schools, had fond memories of their school days and of Mr. Roynon.
He was at where, Palomares?
Yeah, this was at Palomares at kindergarten.
Favorite teacher? I would say here at grammar school, I had probably my favorite teacher was Mr. Dyer. Mr. Dyer was involved in sports, and he took a special interest in me. I don't know why. We got along really well, and he, not that he let me get away with anything, but he made sure that I towed the line. And
probably my favorite classroom teacher was Mrs. Patterson in the 2nd grade, and but my other favorite teacher who I had more time with probably was Mr. Roynon.
My sister's fondest memories are memorizing the multiplication tables and having spelling bees. I don't know what her idea of fun is, but that certainly isn't mine. My favorite teacher was my coach and my shop teacher, so that would be Mr. Haynes, there's no doubt about it. He was a wonderful man. I never had any discrimination directed at me from any of the students at the school and or the teachers. We would jokingly, well, not jokingly, we would, when we were going to play basketball, we'd be saying, we're going to play the Mexicans today, we're going to play the Mexicans today. And lo and behold, on our team, there was Dick Flores, Robert Rodriguez, Eddie Soto, David Diaz, and Darrell Brandt, John Cullen, that I remember. So if we're going to play the Mexicans, we didn't even realize we were Mexicans, I guess, I don't know.
It just seemed like we blended together. I grew up south of the tracks, and all of my friends then were from the Mexican community there. We were, I think, there were 3 families that weren't Mexican at that time, and as I look back on it, I didn't even realize the difference, I guess.
I went to a 50th high school reunion, and a lot of those same people are still around, and we had a wonderful time, even now, talking about the things that happened when we were growing up, because they said you started with a group of kids and you went all through high school, elementary school and high school with the same students. So Lincoln School has fond memories for me.
My memory of coming to Lincoln School is a wonderful 8 years of wonderful teachers who were so highly motivating and loved me. I think they all loved me.
My recollection of Lincoln Elementary School started in the 3rd grade with Mrs. Vanneman, doing the Hopi Indian things and the dances, the snake dance. I can sing the song, but I'm not going to today.
All of my memories of Roynon School are so pleasant. Look around the table and have those memories rekindled. But Genevieve Jordan was, I thought, the principal. Now you're telling me you're only the vice principal, but I remember getting sent to the principal because I had gone splashing around in puddles and getting my tennis shoes all wet. And at that time, we had a garden out there in the field, and if we did our work quickly, our reward was to be able to go out and pull weeds and things like that.
Jesse Castellano sort of was in charge of the group, right? And it was so fun, and I can just remember the teachers laughing and laughing and laughing. We really had a good time. They came to our pool several times, and I don't know, it was a very social group. They liked each other, they liked kids, there was a lot of integrity in that group, high moral values, I think.
Castillo. So many wonderful memories. The kids got along well. We enjoyed each other's company. I still run into people who live here in Laverne, and some of us were classmates from kindergarten all the way through high school. Those are real special relationships and memories that will always be with me.
Mr. Roynon brought credit and honor to the school that carries his name. He exhibited a spirit of dedication unrivaled by many in the field of education. He administered with integrity and efficiency to assure that every child received the opportunity to succeed in school and in life.